Your experiences from decades ago as a child or teenager are still affecting how you think, feel, and behave today. Today, I want to talk about the effects that trauma during childhood has on our mental health later in life as adults. Hi, I'm neuroscientist Dr. Ben Webb, and I want to help you cultivate a healthy brain for a mentally healthy and happy life. Welcome to episode 48 of Better Brain, Better You. How are you doing today? All good, I hope. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode on the effects of early trauma on midlife mental health. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to hear when we release new videos. And thanks so much for listening into the podcast on your favourite podcast platform. If you like what you hear on our show, please do leave us a review. It really helps to spread the word so we can help more people. And we release weekly episodes for brains of all ages. So depression is one of the most common mental health challenges for teenagers. So before we discuss the effects of trauma early in life on mental health later in life, I want to give you a parent's guide to teenage depression. So this free guide will help you to recognize the signs of depression in teenagers, some of the early warning signs of suicidal thoughts, and some really effective strategies for supporting a teenager who is dealing with depression. So you can get this free guide at ologyonlinecourses.com/depression guide. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/depression guide. Depression guide is one word. So I hope this guide is helpful. And if you have any questions, please do post them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so childhood evokes images of innocence, joy, optimism, and wonder. It's a time of security and safety where you are unconditionally protected, nurtured, and loved. And having stability in knowing you are safe and having a secure attachment with your family allows you to form healthy and safe relationships later in life. But sadly, the reality of many young people's experiences and the effect on the rest of their lives is in stark contrast to this description of childhood. Many young people will endure traumatic events and experiences during early childhood or in their teens. So childhood trauma can actually take many different forms: physical or sexual abuse, witnessing a traumatic event, having a severe illness that requires hospitalization or surgery, witnessing domestic violence, experiencing intense bullying as well. And even extreme situations like refugee trauma and experiencing a large-scale natural disaster. These horrendous experiences are all examples of the sort of trauma that many children experience. So we as adults are often unable to process or really understand the impact of these life events. But imagine the scale and scope through a child's eyes, trying to process the nuances of these experiences and trying to understand their role in these traumatic events. Children do not filter information through the prism of education, socialization, and life experience as we do. Most of the time, they will blame themselves because they have no other point of reference to explain why these events occur and why they are happening to them. So childhood trauma chips away at a child's stability and sense of self, undermining their self-worth and often staying with the child into adulthood. This trauma can also impact a person's feelings and behavior into adulthood as they experience feelings of shame and guilt, feeling disconnected and unable to relate to others, trouble controlling their emotions, heightened anxiety and depression and anger as well. So let's take the case of complex trauma when a child is exposed to multiple traumatic events that occurs directly to the child and disrupts their sense of safety and stability. If a child is abused emotionally, physically, or sexually by someone close to them, often a caregiver, it can condition the way the child forms attachments later in life. They may start to see protectors and carers through a different lens, no longer trusting those individuals to keep them safe or even care about them. And once a child's sense of identity is fractured, it takes years of work to rebuild those broken pieces and have them regain trust again. And almost a third of young people in the UK experience trauma during childhood or adolescence. And that doubles their risk of experiencing a range of mental health challenges later in life as an adult. So, for example, women who experience trauma during their early teens, like emotional abuse, living with someone with addiction, or parental separation or divorce, are actually twice as likely to experience major depression during the perimenopause and midlife, even though they weren't any more likely to have experienced depression earlier in life. So these midlife mental health challenges caused by trauma early in life can express themselves in a number of characteristic ways. So when a child who is severely abused or neglected becomes an adult, they may go into survival mode, become ultra-independent, push people away to protect themselves from being rejected again. Or they may become fearful and reject intimate or close relationships. Now, in adulthood, those with fearful avoidant attachments are often distrustful and have a difficult time sharing emotions and may seem disconnected from their partners. But the effects of childhood trauma can be expressed in other ways as well in adulthood. So someone who has experienced abuse or neglect as a child may seem clingy or needy and will require repeated validation in relationships. They will never entirely feel secure, stemming from a child with parents or carers who are not consistent in the emotional security and attachments that they provided. So loving the child and then rejecting them repeatedly causes a child to continuously question their place and require ongoing validation. So the long-lasting effects of childhood trauma are many, and they are nuanced depending on the trauma and the child themselves. So if a child comes from a home that does not provide a sense of security and protection for that child, they may resort to developing their own forms of coping mechanisms, allowing them to function day to day just to survive. So they may live on eggshells, having become accustomed to a parent or carer lashing out at them. And as children and adults, they become hypervigilant and are really sensitive to each interaction they have and the moods of others, fearful that the individual will fly into a rage or even get violent. And as adults, we learn to adapt by withholding their emotions and making waves, masking their fear, anger, and sadness. So strong connections also exist between childhood trauma and high-risk behaviours like smoking, having unprotected sex, and experiencing chronic illness such as heart disease and even cancer. So individuals who have experienced abuse and neglect are much more likely to experience stress and anxiety later in midlife. And this long-term stress and anxiety can cause physical symptoms as well as emotional issues throughout life. So you can see that childhood trauma creates a fractured foundation for an individual for the rest of their lives. And the way we are raised and the sense of security it creates, or shatters for that matter, all impact the emotional and sometimes physical path we take as adults. So as I said at the top of the show, depression is one of the most common mental health problems for teenagers. So we've put together a free guide for you to help you as parents and carers to recognise the signs of depression in teenagers and to give them the support that they need. So this guide gives effective strategies for supporting a teenager who's dealing with depression. You can get this free guide at ologyonlinecourses.com/depression guide. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/depression guide. So please do go ahead and download it. I hope it gives you a better sense and understanding of teenage depression. So thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope it was helpful, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.